Okay, today I will continue our population genetics class. So, we studied about evolution. We studied about different theories of evolution, right? So, evolution is something that leads to the modern variety of all the organisms and all. And there are a lot many reasons um, than we can anticipate behind the evolution, right? One of the major cause behind evolution is no doubt natural selection, a concept given by Darwin, and it is no question is one of the major factor governing evolution. But there are other factors, right? We have studied um, different theories about that causes evolution, like mutation and all. But the foremost thing that is behind evolution is natural selection. So, what is natural selection? Suppose this is a mix of population where it's a population where different traits are there, like red is one trait, blue is one trait, and yellow is another trait. Okay, and nature selects only red one and the yellow one because they are conferring some advantage to the individuals who have these traits, and nature is selecting them to reproduce and grow in number. So this is the concept of natural selection, where nature selects some trait which are advantageous for the survival of the organism in a changing condition, and they survive and they reproduce. But this is not the only reason, right? This is not the only reason behind evolution. There are others. One of the major cause behind evolution that I have discussed but not in detail is genetic drift. So genetic drift, what is genetic drift? Genetic drift is a sudden random change in the genetic makeup of a population. It's a sudden random change, and that is not controlled by anything. Okay, and it is not selected by nature. It is random and it is sudden. I am giving you a simple example. These are 10 rabbits. Phenotypically, there are two types. 8 of the 10 rabbits are brown and 2 are white, right? But genotypically, they are different. Suppose there are two genes that governs the color of the rabbit body. One is capital B, that is the dominant allele, and another is the small b, that is the recessive allele. Homozygous dominant, that is capital B, these rabbits are obviously brown. As the capital B is dominant, therefore heterozygous capital B, small b are also brown, while recessive homozygous, that is small b are white. So the frequency of the capital B allele or small p is equals to 0.5, and the frequency of the recessive allele small b q is also 0.5. We know this from the Hardy-Weinberg equation that p plus q is equals to 1. So here it is evident from the picture also that there is equal number of the capital B allele and small b allele present in this rabbit population. So this is the first generation. There are 10 rabbits, 8 are brown 2 are white. So the phenotypic ratio is 8:2. While the genotypic ratio is different, 2 are homozygous dominant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are heterozygous dominant, and 2 are homozygous recessive. So the ratio, genotypic ratio is 2:6:2, while the phenotypic ratio is 8:2. And the gene frequency of the dominant allele is 0.5 and the recessive allele is also 0.5. Now, both the allele are equally advantageous for the rabbit, like capital B or small b. None of them are conferring any specific advantage to the rabbit. So, there is no chance that any one of them can be naturally selected or selected by nature for survival. So, here in this case, no natural selection is functioning. But still, a sudden change may occur. A sudden change, a random change. Suppose the first 5 rabbits are selected and they're allowed to reproduce. Somehow, they are chosen randomly. Suppose the left 5 were died. They were dead. Okay, and these 5 survived and they reproduced. So now, and it is quite randomly. There is no other reasons behind their death or their inability to reproduce. Nothing. Suddenly, randomly, these 5 were selected and they were allowed to reproduce. When they reproduce and produces a second generation, what we can find? We'll find that the genotypic ratio and the phenotypic ratio are changed now. What are the results? We can see here. Here, the phenotypic ratio has changed from 8:2 to now 9:1. Brown is to white ratio. While phenotypically, they're 9:1. Genotypically, homozygous dominant is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Homozygous recessive is only 1, and the left 4 are heterozygous dominant. So, in the second generation, the genotypic ratio is 5:4:1, while in the first generation it was 2:6:2. Likewise, the frequency changes, the allele frequency changes. Here, it is evident from the picture that there is an increase in the frequency or increase in the appearance of the capital B allele. They are more in number than the first generation in this rabbit population, and the small b decreases or appears in a lower number in this population. And we can see that here the capital B gene frequency or allele frequency here is 0.7, while in case of first generation it was 0.5. Here it is 0.7, and the lowercase or small b, that is the recessive allele, its frequency decreases from 0.5 to 0.3. So this change we can see here. Natural selection is not acting here, right? Both the allele is equally advantageous to the rabbit. So there is no natural selection. Randomly 5 rabbits were able to survive, others died, or for some reason they did not reproduce. Only the first 5 reproduced, and they produce their second generation. And here we can see that it is sudden random change that the capital B allele frequency increases while the small b allele frequency decreases. Now again, randomly, these two rabbits survived and they reproduced. Others somehow perished, died, or did not reproduce. This is randomly. Other rabbits might have some problem, they might have died from something. These two only survived and they reproduced. In the third generation, see, all of them were brown. There is no white rabbit, and the genetic makeup is all capital B, capital P. All of them were dominant, homozygous dominant. Likewise, this is not second generation, this is third generation. The capital B or the dominant allele frequency changes from 0.5 to 0.7 to 1, while the small b or recessive allele frequency changes from 0.5 to second generation 0.3 to third generation to 0. So here we can see that in a sudden random change, all on a sudden, without any natural selection acting over here, what is happening? The frequency of some allele is suddenly changing, and some of the allele are surviving, some of the allele are diminishing in the population. This is not done by any natural selection. This process is random, this process is sudden. This process occurs within 2 generations, but natural selection is not that fast. It takes time. It needs generations to adapt to the newer condition, and slowly nature selects them. But genetic drift is a rapid change, is a random change, and natural selection does not control it. So these two things, natural selection and genetic drift, are very important to understand evolution. If we want to